Iran felt the full force of the world-leading US military after a conflict between the two broke out in late February 2026. To overwhelm its opponent, the US deployed some of its finest assets, including decades-old stalwarts like Rockwell B-1 Lancer bombers and E-3 Sentry airborne early warning and control aircraft, as well as more modern innovations like General Atomics MQ-9 Reaper drones. But there's one other weapon that America has also allegedly unleashed on Iran that has, until now, been top secret, completely classified, to the point where even seasoned military experts weren't sure whether or not it actually existed. The Northrop Grumman RQ-180, a state-of-the-art spy drone boasting extraordinary technical specifications and never-before-seen capacities. An unmanned aerial vehicle so advanced that it could shape the face of aerial warfare for generations to come. For years, military analysts, experts, and enthusiasts have been desperate to know more about this extraordinary innovation, sifting through reams of open-source intelligence data, scanning satellite imagery for even the faintest hint or glimpse of the RQ-180 in action. Now, at long last, we have real pictures, hard evidence of the RQ-180 soaring stealthily across the skies of the Mediterranean, reportedly being used to support US operations in Iran. To understand why this is such a monumental milestone, it's important to take a step back and explore what the RQ-180 actually is. Because despite being an almost futuristic science fiction-like creation, the origins of this spy plane actually date back several decades. It was in 1989, to be exact, that the US Air Force officially retired the Lockheed SR-71 Blackbird, a long-range high-altitude Mach 3+ strategic reconnaissance aircraft that had been introduced to service in 1966. Having been used extensively throughout the Cold War era, the Blackbird came at last to the end of its operational lifespan, leaving the Air Force without any intelligence platform that was capable of penetrating enemy airspace guarded by advanced air defense systems. And so, work began on a new platform, one with vastly more advanced technologies and superior capabilities than its predecessor, the RQ-180. Secretly funded via the Air Force's classified budget, responsibility for the RQ-180 program fell into the hands of Northrop Grumman, which had beaten out competition from the other big aerospace and defense contractors in America, Boeing and Lockheed Martin. Over the years, Northrop Grumman's engineers and developers pieced together the blueprints for this next-level aircraft, primarily working at the most top-secret bases at their disposal, including Area 51. The company, and the Air Force in general, have been incredibly secretive about the whole thing, revealing almost no details about this aircraft. Even its name, RQ-180, has never been officially acknowledged. As a result, almost everything we know about it is based on a mixture of leaks, expert estimations, speculation, and informed analysis, rather than any sort of officially published list of technical specifications. With that said, there are still several things we know. For example, the first flight of the RQ-180 is believed to have taken place in August of 2010. There's also evidence to suggest that the early production aircraft were taking to the air in the years that followed, with multiple active airframes by the mid-2010s. And even though the US military has never publicly announced or acknowledged this, many experts believe the RQ-180 officially entered operational service with the Air Force's 74th Reconnaissance Squadron at some stage prior to 2020. Throughout the 2020s, the world has at last started to catch little glimpses of the RQ-180 here and there. The first photograph of the plane was seemingly captured in October 2020, for example, showing what was believed to be the super-secret spy drone soaring some 20,000 feet above Edwards Air Force Base. In September 2021, another image emerged, this time showing what appeared to be the RQ-180 flying stealthily and silently over the Philippines. Later that same year, a placeholder image of the RQ-180 featured in a video shared by the Air Force's Professional Arms Center of Excellence, PACE. The video also introduced a new nickname for this stealthy spy plane, the White Bat. Then, much more recently, in March of 2026, the drone was seen yet again. The story began on March 18, when a local Greek news website, onlarissa.gr, published pictures of what its reporters mistakenly identified as a B-2 bomber landing at the Larissa Air Base, which belongs to Greece's Hellenic Air Force, but has also been used by the US military for hosting MQ-9 Reaper drones. The same news outlet followed up with a video of the craft in action, explaining that it had allegedly experienced some sort of technical issue and been forced to make an emergency landing in northern central Greece, according to anonymous sources. No further details have been shared, but the emergency landing story adds up, given the fact that the plane was spotted making its landing in the middle of the day. Given the secrecy around this entire project over the years, it's highly unlikely that the US Air Force would have wanted to show off its stealthy new spy plane in broad daylight, unless it had no other option. The only thing that the On Larissa reporters got wrong was the name of the craft. It was, almost without question, an RQ-180. This was effectively confirmed in the days that followed, as more and more images, including several videos captured by bemused onlookers in the area, began to hit the internet. The craft, nicknamed the Lady of Larissa, which aviation experts and military analysts soon pored over every frame of the footage to learn as much as they could about this extraordinary new aircraft. Enthusiasts also began to discuss what the so-called Lady of Larissa was doing in that part of the world, especially at the time of America's ongoing operation in the Middle East. It didn't take long for these experts to put two and two together, coming to the clear and obvious conclusion that the White Bat was being used in some way in Iran. Open-source intelligence analyst Intel Walrus, for example, wrote on X, "This aircraft seen over Larissa, Greece, is not a B-2 like the local Greek news reported or an RQ-170, but is in fact best imagery ever published of the RQ-180, an undisclosed low observable drone used by the USAF. Location suggests use in the Iran conflict." Military news outlets like the War Zone have since reached out to the likes of US Air Forces in Europe, USAF, and the Pentagon for comment, but have received no responses thus far, with the military clearly unwilling to reveal any extra details about what the RQ-180 can do or why one was seen in that part of the world. But that may not matter, as the images captured by Larissa locals are already more than enough to tell us quite a lot about this unusual aircraft, and may even allow us to make educated, informed guesses about its applications in Iran. For example, in images taken of the underside of the drone's fuselage, we can see one of the RQ-180's most fascinating features, a pair of large electro-optical sensor apertures situated just behind the main landing gear bay. These two windows are clearly angled to the left and right respectively. Behind the glass, there's likely to be a multi-spectral sensor system capable of scanning the ground below the aircraft and far beyond, all the way out to the horizon. By having one of these windows on either side, the RQ-180 could, theoretically, perform racetrack patterns in the air, many miles away from whatever target it happens to be tracking without ever losing sight of it. It's more than likely capable of collecting enormous amounts of intelligence over vast swathes of terrain compared to almost any conventional surveillance aircraft, and it can do it all without even needing a real human pilot on board. Looking deeper, numerous experts agree that a craft of this kind would almost undoubtedly be in possession of some of the most powerful radar technologies available today, surely capable of both ground-moving target indicator (GMTI) and synthetic aperture radar (SAR) modes. In a nutshell, GMTI gives battle managers the clearest possible picture of the enemy's ground movements, all in real time. It's a vital technology in modern warfare, allowing forces to preempt their enemy's actions by scanning for sudden changes in force posture, size or location. SAR, meanwhile, is used for creating high-resolution 2D or 3D images of terrain and stationary objects. These two technologies therefore complement one another quite well, with SAR providing images of the landscape and GMTI filling in the scene with pinpoint locations of enemy vehicles, personnel, and other assets. Both systems are capable of working in almost any conceivable atmospheric conditions and at any time of day or night. In other words, bad weather and darkness are no obstacles for this technology. And that's just one part of the RQ-180's incredible design. But before we take a closer look at the rest, if this is the kind of insight you want more of, make sure you're subscribed to The Military Show. We break it down like this every week. When analyzing the photos and videos of the RQ-180, eagle-eyed observers soon spotted another intriguing feature. The sensor apertures seen on the underside of the drone looked almost identical to those spotted on another aircraft, the scaled composites Proteus. An experimental tandem-wing high-altitude long-endurance aircraft, the Proteus was designed by legendary aerospace engineer Burt Rutan and first took flight in July of 1998. The Proteus has been used over the decades as a testing craft for various sensors and advanced systems. On top of that, Scaled Composites is a wholly owned subsidiary of Northrop Grumman. So once again, it's not too difficult to connect the dots here. It seems that the Proteus was used for experimenting with the very same sensors that have since been fitted to the RQ-180. And the discoveries don't end there. Images of the drone also show quite a clear pronounced bulge beneath the central fuselage of the aircraft, which is exactly where the main radar array would most logically be housed. While we can't be completely sure about any of this, unless or until the Air Force confirms or denies it, it's likely that this area contains either a rotating radar or a two-sided radar, allowing the aircraft to scan the same area, no matter which direction it's flying in. There's likely enough space in the body of the plane for additional conformal arrays or even load-bearing arrays, as well as extra equipment, from electronic warfare gear to electronic surveillance measures hardware and communications antennas to maintain a direct link with nearby ground, air or sea units. The excellent new images of the Lady of Larissa also show the broad placement of its tricycle-style landing gear, as well as the extraordinary size of its wingspan. Having the landing gear so spaced out would, in theory, help to support a larger payload on board the aircraft, while also delivering superior stability on the ground. Experts have also spotted what seems to be a foreign object debris FOD deflector attached to the wheel of the nose landing gear. This may seem like a minor addition, but it's an important one. Stealthy aircraft like the RQ-180 are typically fitted with special coatings that absorb radar signals to make them much harder to detect. If those coatings suffer even the slightest scratch or scuff, they can suddenly become much less effective. And given the size and low-profile nature of the RQ-180's design, it will most likely sit quite low down when on the ground or just before taking off. So there's a higher than average risk of rocks and other bits of debris being kicked up and hitting the body of the drone as it leaves the runway, as well as when it makes its landings. The FOD deflector, therefore, is a helpful shield against the sort of small but meaningful damage that those little elements can cause. Now, continuing with the landing gear, we can also see a trailing link or trailing arm attached to the nose gear strut, which should help to soften the impact of the spy plane landing. Again, this is small, but it matters, as these drones are likely going to be extremely expensive to construct and maintain, so every little bit helps when it comes to minimizing damage and keeping the craft in peak condition. The nose landing gear is also arranged in a two-wheel configuration, similar to what we've seen on the B-21 Raider bomber, albeit not quite as large. Meanwhile, the RQ-180's main landing gear also looks familiar, as it seems almost identical to that seen on F-15 fighter jets. This is not surprising, as it's quite a common practice within the aerospace world to borrow or reuse the same components from previous designs. What isn't broken doesn't need fixing after all, and that landing gear has proven itself on countless occasions during the long history of the F-15, so it should be a fine fit for the RQ-180 as its own operational life cycle continues. The use of the F-15 style landing gear also gives us a clue as to the RQ-180's maximum takeoff weight. The latest F-15EX variants have a top weight of 81,000 pounds, and if Northrop Grumman has opted to use similar gear here, it's possible that the RQ-180 could have a similar or even potentially higher maximum weight. At the same time, it's important to remember that this is a reconnaissance and surveillance plane. It's not intended to be used for bombing runs or firing missiles, and the lighter it is, the longer it'll be able to stay airborne and the further it'll be able to travel without using up all its fuel. With that said, the overall design of the RQ-180 has more than likely been created to keep the craft as light as possible, maximizing its range, endurance, and in-air performance, with reported capacities of 14,000-mile, 22,000-kilometer range, 24-hour endurance, and a service ceiling of approximately 60,000 feet or 18,000 meters. The Greek pictures of this spy plane also show off its distinctive shape, which we've seen before, but has now been revealed in even greater detail. As mentioned, it bears much in common with the B-21 Raider and the B-2 Spirit, with a flying wing form and ultra-clean smooth sculpting from tip to tail. It's believed that the drone's design would allow it to loiter at extreme altitudes, carrying out extensive recon and surveillance missions, and gathering reams of data to keep forces informed of enemy movements on the ground or in the air. Which leads us up to the biggest question: what has the RQ-180 been doing in Iran? Well, once again, there's been no official confirmation that it's even been used there, but the fact that one was spotted in Greece suggests that it's been part of the American and Israeli operation in the Middle East. From what we know about this aircraft, as well as what we know about the operation itself, it's certainly possible, and even likely, that the RQ-180 could have been used for hunting down Iran's most advanced missile launchers. The country's military has been confirmed to possess highly mobile launch platforms, many of which have been carefully disguised to look very similar to civilian-style trucks when viewed from above. Some of them operate out of hardened or underground bases that even have special ports and openings, allowing missiles to be fired from within, and many move about the vast rugged landscapes of Iran, taking up strategic locations here and there to launch their munitions before quickly fleeing the area and seeking shelter somewhere new. These are some of the deadliest elements in the Iranian arsenal because of their mobility. It would be very difficult for many military forces to keep track of their movements and know when and where they're going to suddenly strike next. But imagine you had an almost imperceptible, state-of-the-art unmanned aerial vehicle tens of thousands of feet overhead, constantly scanning the land with some of the best radar technology in the world, with enough fuel to carry out 24-hour sorties and no need for any onboard crew at all. Such a plane would be invaluable in a situation like this in terms of providing that much-needed intelligence that America's and Israel's ground and air teams need to carry out their next bombing runs and missile strikes, wiping even more of Iran's defenses off the map before they even have a chance to use them. While other surveillance craft or drones would only be able to carry out brief sorties, or may even be spotted and eliminated by Iranian air defenses, the RQ-180 would be able to soar far higher and far more stealthily than anything else at the Air Force's disposal. Carrying out deep surveillance in denied airspace, with almost no risk of detection, it would give US forces the eyes in the skies they need on a round-the-clock basis. And there's no telling what else it might be capable of. Some experts have suggested that the RQ-180 could be able to carry out electronic surveillance to gather ELINT data, for example, or maybe equipped with electronic warfare technologies to disrupt or jam enemy communications. It might also serve as a high-altitude communications relay, a central data node, feeding a stream of real-time intel to other aircraft like F-22s, F-35s, or other next-gen systems. There's still so much we don't know about this aircraft, but what we do know so far quite clearly suggests that it's about to usher in a whole new era for drone warfare. Because this is one of the very few known drones stealthy enough to survive in contested or enemy airspace without detection. Its unique blend of stealth, endurance, and advanced surveillance technology makes it a formidable force, capable of collecting intelligence in places that would be simply too risky for manned aircraft to venture into. And this is only one of the next-gen futuristic weapons in use today with the US military. You can learn about many others in this extensive video breakdown. Alternatively, check out this video for an in-depth look at how US forces pulled off the rescue mission of the century in Iran, saving an injured officer who was being hunted down by enemy forces. And finally, make sure to subscribe to the Military Show for more videos just like this.